Hello and welcome to our final look at spiritual disciplines. In the last few weeks, we have been looking at solitude and silence, and today brings that to conclusion. We'll be looking at hearing from God and then resting in Him. Both are areas we have covered quite a bit over the recent years, knowing very well that we all encounter God's voice differently. This can be loud when you're sleeping or when you're walking down the street. Some others will encounter His voice through someone else, maybe quietly, not as loud as others. Same time, resting looks different for each one of us. Some struggle with this idea of resting and what that means to them because they're so busy with the day-to-day that they don't really comprehend this word resting in their vocabulary, day-to-day vocabulary. So what does that look like? What does that mean? So let's go straight to the first book, which is Isaiah 30 verses 15 to 22. Now, I am not going to read all these verses, but I encourage you to please make time to go through, reflect on this, listen to what God is saying to you through these verses. The first one, which is 15 to 22, really focuses on strength and the guidance that comes from listening, hearing, trusting, and resting in God, giving us an opportunity to just slow down a little bit, become slightly less self-reliant, but instead rely on God, listen to Him to shape where we go, an opportunity to discern what is good from what is bad, unless we can stop. Unless we can listen to Him, we miss what He is saying to us. So, rest and trust, what do they look like? In verse 15, we read these words: "In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength." Here, God is giving us an opportunity to find peace. Stop what we are doing, what the world may be forcing us to do, and turn back to Him, resting instead in His presence and trusting His ways. This message was given to a people that were so busy, that were resisting God and instead choosing to rely on themselves and in their own strength. But this verse is calling us to stop that and instead turn to Him and start resting in Him instead. Verse 18 and 21 says, "Yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" God doesn't abandon us. He doesn't leave us on our own. He's promised multiple times never to leave us nor forsake us. We know that. So this is there and is true even when we walk our own way, when we are stubborn, when we are ignoring Him. He is always there with us. It is us who switch off Him rather than Him switching off us. He patiently waits, ready to guide us, ready to show us the way. So when we quiet ourselves and listen, we'll be able to hear His voice directing us gently and clearly. This is an important discipline, as we have already established over the recent few weeks. And then in verse 22, resting can lead to a renewal and to a cleansing. The words read like this: "Then you will defile your idols and throw them away like a menstrual cloth, and say to them, 'Away with you.'" I know it's a picture that some of us are very familiar with. And it is something that we can put in practice no matter who we are or what our gender is, even though the picture may seem to be more common with some people than others. But the point is, we have an opportunity to start afresh. We have an opportunity to get rid of some of the things that we may not be happy with in our lives. But this only becomes a reality when we are listening to God and when we are resting in Him, as Isaiah 30:15-22 has said. And then the second book that I want to look at briefly is John 15, again, verses 1-16. A lot of verses there, but for you to go through. So I'm not going to go through and read all of those, but instead I'm going to go straight into verse 4 of chapter 15. It says, "Abide in me, and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me." Here we see an invitation from Jesus for us to rest in Him, not to strive. Like branches drawing life from the vine, our faithfulness flows from that dependence on God. We are drawing what we need, our life, our strength, and everything else from Him. So we must remain connected. If we fall away from Him, then we are like that branch that is going to fall away from the vine and stop bearing fruit, because that's the source of its life. The nutrients it needs, the ingredients it needs to be able to produce that fruit can only come when it remains connected. We need the same thing. And then in verse 7, John 15:7, "If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you." What does this mean? Well, I think it means hearing God means letting His words settle deep within us. This is a devotion a bit, right? It's not just about reading right through something very quickly, but really making time to let that word really sit deep within you. That is what this is all about. As we rest in His voice, His words, where we go next is more likely to align with what He is saying to us, what His will is for you and I. So it is important that we pay attention to this verse 7. And then verse 16, chapter 15 of John. "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide." This is something intentional that God has intentionally decided to do. He has made a choice to know you and to show His love to you. And that was demonstrated through Christ dying on the cross for each one of us. We cannot do anything to earn this, but instead, as we saw earlier in the year, receive it as a gift that He has given to us. So resting in love and purpose, that's what 16 is all about. It comes from the choice that He has already made, a decision that He has made to love you and I, to get to know you and I, and everything else follows. So let's receive that gift that God has given us from John 15. And then the last book I want to look at is Kings 19. And again, here we're going to look at verses 1 to 18. Lots of verses. Please read in your own time. I'm going to pull out 3 areas that may be useful from, again, a spiritual discipline perspective. So here we're looking at a lot of stillness, being still in his presence. What's that mean? 1 Kings chapter 19, starting with verse 12. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. After the fire came a gentle whisper. This is about Elijah. Elijah didn't encounter God. As we said earlier on, some people do it this way, but he didn't encounter God in a dramatic way, wind or earthquake or fire, but it was a gentle whisper, which some of us encounter when we hear God's voice. So hearing God often requires us stepping away from the noise, as I covered last week, and resting in his stillness, where his voice is subtle but sure. We are often surrounded by so much, and sometimes it is because of that we miss what God is saying to us. Here, it could be that gentle whisper that you miss out if you don't make time to listen to him. And then in verse 7, the angel of the Lord came back and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." Before Elijah could hear God's direction, he needed sleep and nourishment. He had some needs that were so present, that were so immediate. God chose to meet those needs first, showing that it was necessary for him to be in the right place physically and mentally ahead of the spiritual journey that he was on, or the things that were yet to come. So God doesn't just push you or push me, but there are things he is aware of that he will meet first to help us prepare for the journey ahead, as it is here in chapter 19, verse 7. And then finally, verse 18, "Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal." Now, Elijah was feeling probably alone, isolated, that maybe a lot of people were turning away from God but him and him only in this moment. But God reminded him of the unseen faithful. Resting in God means trusting him over our fears, knowing we are never truly abandoned. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal. That those who are bowing to these foreign gods, but there were many others who were like Elijah, following God. And sometimes you may feel isolated. You may think you are on your own within that faith journey that you're in. But here's a reminder that never, never, ever feel alone. Others are there too. But God is forever with you. And probably he's a reminder you need, so you can carry on strongly on a journey that you're on. All these are important disciplines that we need. And we have probably focused a lot on solitude and silence, but it is important. It's something that you and I can have in our own free, spare time, but also in our own busy and crazy time. It is you and God. That is the key that I want you to take away. It's about you and God alone. I hope you have found something that's been encouraging or been challenged perhaps over the last few weeks. But I encourage you to do more, read more, talk to others, pray with others, but most importantly, make time to listen to God. Make time to listen to His voice. It might just be that gentle whisper rather than an earthquake or a fire. It might just be when you are away on your own from the noise and the distractions that surround us day in, day out. Unless you make time for those opportunities, you're going to miss out on them and miss what God is saying to you. Take care, be encouraged, and God bless you. Bye.